Yeah. So, does anyone want to start us off? I'm also an SFP as well. Um, so that's good. And I think what can be useful as well. I'm gonna try something. Let me see if it works as well. But yeah, I can also challenge if you would like. I can definitely challenge. So if no one wants to kick off the question just yet, I can throw in something. Oh, I wait because there's definitely a topic that it seems has come up, and I want to throw down. I'll bring up the verse just. Long hair and short hair. Okay. That's an interesting one. Do you want to I feel maybe I know the question, but do you want to phrase it? I feel the question is like what counts as long, what counts as short? Am I in the right ballpark? Okay. So in terms of long and short hair, I think the best and cleanest answer I could give is that um for men, right? For men, it seems that max. Let me bring this up. Let me bring this up. Let me bring this up. Uh, okay. All right. So we have this from. I'm picking it from Maranatha, but it's in other places. When it first appeared, this cloud looked very small. So this is Jesus coming back. The angel said it was the sign of the Son of Man. As it drew nearer the earth, we could behold the excellent glory and majesty of Jesus as he rode forth to conquer. His hair was white and curly and lay on his shoulders. Now, as some of you are aware, right? If your hair lays on your shoulders, so first of all, if you have like, should I say 4A? Is it 4A, 4B, or 4C type hair, right? Is it gonna lay on your shoulders? Does anyone know those gradings? If you, oh wait, I don't think everyone knows those gradings. Okay, um, sorry, why did I say that? Like those gradings would be known. Let me give you an example, right? So, oh, sorry. I think have I got it the other way around? Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Okay, is that really? Is that for? You know what? Let me not use these gradings because I've just searched up some pictures myself, and last time I checked, it wasn't this. So I'll come back to it. But I'll say this: if you're of a if you're of a race where your hair grows upwards, right? As your hair grows, it's not going to go on your shoulder, right? For example, some of you may have seen my hair. If my hair grows, it will never lay on my shoulder because my hair doesn't grow downwards. Now, there are certain types of hair textures where they grow downwards. And what we can see here is maybe a good proxy for the length. So let's say you have this Jesus's hair goes down to his shoulders, right? That's quite a few inches, it seems, if his hair lay on his shoulders. In fact, this is typically an image, right, that I would give. I'm posting this image temporarily. Hold up. So this is how I'm imagining it, right? You don't get to keep this image, by the way. So can everybody see this image? One sec, it's loading. It's loading. It's loading. It should be there. Can everyone see this image? Looks cool, doesn't it? Anyway, um, can you see where the hair kind of drops off or lands? When you're imagining this quote, does this quote, can you see how the quote can almost kind of align with this image in terms of how his hair likely looks? So I'm thinking, obviously, we can't say Jesus has too long hair, because he would be, perfection. So let's say someone's hair as a male went down to their shoulder in length. It's hard for me to say that's too long. You guys see what I mean? I can't say that. I know culturally, though, in certain communities, right? Because especially where your hair grows up, um, this would be seen as long hair, right? But I would say we could look at that as the maximum, essentially. Like if it goes down to your shoulders, that's sort of the maximum, if you will. It only leads to my next question. All right, go.
Okay, so my next question is obviously the scriptures say that if a woman have long hair, it's a glory unto her, right?
Hmm.
And then it seems that the maximum length for a guy is shoulder length. So then that means that's considered short, right? I don't know if I'm going too far with this, but I think what I'm trying to ask is, does it mean if a woman's hair isn't long, it's not a glory unto her?
Mm. So
Or is there an difference? Probably I'm on to the Bible.
probably because of your other phone, yeah.
Yeah, I just point now.
You have
Sorry,
to hold on. I can if
I'll just come
you
on.
okay. So just for context, right? The scripture that Anne Marie is referencing is 1 Corinthians 11:13-16. It says this. It says, "Judging yourselves, is it comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered? Doth not even nature teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory unto her, for her hair is giving her for a covering. But if any man seem to be contentious, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God." So at least here he makes the case that, okay, woman has long hair, it's a glory, right? Now, how the length at which, I wouldn't necessarily say if it goes down to shoulders is necessarily short, right?
Mhm.
Per se. Like what is it seems there would be how can I put it? Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily that you could say, okay, therefore your hair is short. Because even for a guy, we would say that your hair is, quite full, right?
Mm.
If it goes down past your shoulders, let's say down your back, maybe that's where we would say that, yeah, your hair um is really, really long. But then yeah, I wouldn't classify shoulders as necessarily short. It could be, let's say for a woman, it could be on the shorter side, but not necessarily it means that it's boom short. Like for example, if a guy had like a buzz cut, that's him having short hair. Him
Mm.
having the hair down to the shoulders, let's say that's his hair is quite full, right? In our day, we would say that's on the longer side, but we would
Mm.
say he has a lot of hair. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that much hair universally is counted as short. So like there
Okay.
could be an in between. That could be an in between whereby okay, the guy's at, let's say, roughly the maximum, but for a girl, maybe it's not necessarily we would call it short, but it's on the shorter side. But if she goes past that, then you're getting into the territory of short.
So then I'm just thinking about verse 15 though, where it says, "But if a woman have long hair, it's a glory for her," because that means if we're not counting shoulder length as long, it's just like full, then is it still a glory? Because of verse 15.
Is it still a glory? I would say it would still be. I would say it'd still be a glory to her. Um, yeah, I mean, let me give an example, right? If I look at some of the Adventist. So let me look at old Adventist photos. Um, let's bring them up. Uh, photo 1800. So if you look at some of these ladies and their hair, right? It seems that it seems that a lot of them also like kind of tied up their hair. Like they
Mm.
like to do this style where they'll tie it up in a sense. But sorry if this is not the greatest quality, but generally, I guess it wouldn't have been too big an issue. Like you can tell, for example, let me take Sister White. You can tell Sister White's hair could clearly be much longer because she's got it tied up.
Mm.
But even here, she's only tying it like, she's actually tying it up. So if it was an issue in terms of, oh, it must at all times appear long, because I think this is maybe what you're getting towards. Does it need to appear long in its full length the whole time? Right? Let me answer that as a first question. And it seems that no. Like, for example, let's say a girl had really, really, really long hair way past the shoulders. If she tied it up such that, it's not past the shoulder, is that an issue? No. Right? And I guess the second point is, okay, but just having, let's say it's down to her shoulders and she ties that up, right? Or she's down to her shoulders, she leaves it like that. Is that an issue? I can't see evidence that it's like what Paul is saying is that at that point it's counted as short and therefore it's not a glory to the woman. Let's say you get
Mm.
to like a buzz cut for the woman. Okay, now the case could probably be made because both for a guy and a girl, you would objectively call that short hair.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm. Let me see if there's more pictures as well. Um, mm, mm, mm. And let me see if I can find. Uh, okay, let me see. Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, that's
Or
what I
short.
thought as well. It's more hints given the fault to sorry. Yeah, like I don't feel like well, I don't know because I feel like at first and growing up, I remember in the church I grew up in, they didn't
Yep.
allow any guys to have long hair at all. Every guy had to have like a low sort of phase type thing, like no plaits, no like big big afros. Like they wanted it low all the time because they thought that like the men's hair had to be longer than like women. But obviously, when we see these quotes about the length of Jesus' hair, it's showing that for a guy, shoulder length is still considered short enough for a man. So I think what I was starting to think is it that like maybe back in the day, like years ago, all women's hair was like literally like long to like the back, let's say, and maybe there's genetic things that have happened. That's why certain women's hair are shorter than the other. Like, that's sort of what I was trying to go down because I only was thinking that because it says, but if a woman have long hair, it's a glory to her. But then if a man's hair can be at his shoulder, and then a lot of women today's hair can like reach the shoulder, then maybe there's like I don't know, I don't know. But that's what I was
Think,
thinking.
think of it like this. Let's say a man had hair to his shoulder.
Yeah.
Would you say he has short hair?
No, I would say for a man that's long. Like I
You'd
would
say
think
for a
that.
man. Right, right, right. But this is the thing. That means hair at that length among the genders, like let's say if Paul is comparing, let's say, okay, if a man have long hair, it's not a glory to him, but it's a glory to the woman.
Mm.
Whatever begins to count as long for the man, I guess the way you'd have to take it is that that is objectively long in a
Okay.
sense. So let's say the man has hair past his shoulders, right? And
Hmm.
let's say we're imagining this, and it's like, I'm guessing this would be the range that Paul is talking about. Um, a man, let's say his hair went past his shoulders, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, people are like, yeah, he has long hair.
Hmm.
And then for a woman, does that mean that you would necessarily say that's long? You notice how not necessarily, as in for women, that could be quite average.
Hmm.
Do you see what I mean? It's like what
Yeah.
is long on the man is not necessarily long on the woman, but just because it's not necessarily long on the woman, it doesn't mean it's short, right? It could be a decent length. Like long and short aren't a binary, you know,
Yeah.
like past this centimeter, it's now long, past this centimeter is now short, right?
But
So,
then I guess I was only thinking it because obviously me growing up, I would think that shoulder length hair on a guy is long, but
mhm.
obviously long hair is supposed to be for women, for what we know. So that means now that we've seen a quotation on where Jesus' hair length, it means that that would be short then. Or are we saying that it's just like what would it be then if it's not
I
long?
would say that's
Shoulder length hair.
probably, I would look at it like this. It's probably like the
Long for a guy?
optimal. No, I wouldn't even, I would say it's probably, that's why I'm using the word full. It's the perfect length.
Okay.
And let's imagine perfection like this. Perfection, it could be the point at which it wouldn't have been as great if he went shorter. It wouldn't have been as great if he went longer. We don't know. But for some reason, we know that that was the perfect length. God would know the perfect length of hair to choose for himself. Jesus will know the perfect length of hair to choose for himself. And
Hmm.
if that's the perfect length, that's the perfect length, right?
Hmm.
Whether that counts as long or short in an objective sense, we don't have another, kind of, at least I don't know another testimony that tells us that is what's counted as long or that's what's counted as short,
Okay.
etc.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Fair
But
enough.
I would
Yeah,
say
yeah,
that, yeah, I would say that what could be a good marker is that, well, if Jesus knows the perfect length to go towards, if you go beyond that length, what's the point, right? Clearly, you don't have to go up to that length. We see that at least in scripture, some people, were bold and stuff like that and had shorter hair.
yeah.
That's fine. But if you go beyond that, I mean, why are you trying to have more hair than your Lord? Like, if He's chosen the
Yeah.
perfect length, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, whilst I may not have the word long or short specifically to that length, at least what I can say is, okay, what counts as long for a guy, because you may not necessarily say that's long for a girl, it doesn't mean at the same time what counts as short for a guy equals short for a girl. There's a spectrum,
Hmm.
right? And because there's a spectrum there, I would say what's a good policy to follow is, look, if it's, your hair's flowing down to like shoulder length and more and stuff, you're in a good ballpark, right?
Hmm.
Now, if you want to tie that up, right, so there's not a lot in the way, then yeah, that's fine as well. Um, but like a specific length, I would have to see if there's like, I don't know, if there's some sort of testimony. I doubt it though. If there was some
Mm.
sort of testimony or something like that. But I would say this: when you start getting into the territory of like, let's say, buzz cuts for women, and I don't know, even going bald, right? And let's say you don't have a problem with, say, growing out your hair. That's when it starts to get into, the territory of, okay, now you are going into the short hair territory. Do you see what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's more of a spectrum. All right. Good question. Good question. Um, and do you know what's interesting? Just before I go to David's question, um, oh, actually, Anne Marie, Sister Merly has something which is an addendum to that. Wait, Northern Israel, Shalmaneser. It's interesting, right? When you look at how the Israelites the Israelite men used to wear their hair? Look at this. You know, in the northern, at least the northern kingdom. Now, the thing is, it doesn't mean that. Now, in this case, they had the right length. It seems not because of because they were in sin at this point anyway. But at least we can see from the testimonies that okay, this length may have been fine actually. But can you see how they wore their hair in northern Israel? By the way, just for clarity, the two tall ones are Assyrians, but the one bowing down is an Israelite. And then if you count 1, 2, 3, the shorter one, he's an Israelite again. So the three at the back are Israelites. Is everyone with me so far? So the one bowing down is an Israelite. Then you go 1, 2, over the two tall people. Then you're back down to the Israelites. Just for some clarity, I doubt the Assyrians were all taller than the Israelites, right? I think there was probably some variations in the heights, but they just depicted the Israelites as shorter than them. Because I think they did this to every tribe that was bowing down to the king. They always made their people shorter. It was something I noticed. It's like, what? How is it that they're all perfectly shorter than the Assyrians? Well, the Assyrians some like tall, gigantic people, or something. I doubt that. That you're all perfectly taller than all the Israelites. Come on. Anyway, that's politics from the old kingdom coming there in Stele. And Judah, what's interesting in the kingdom of Judah, when you look at the Lachish reliefs, there's I think is actually pronounced Lachish. The Jews have a way of pronouncing that. The H is almost like, if you look at their hair, it's more shorter. So in Judah, their hair was a bit more like, short, more compact. Just showing you like the slight difference. So this is just a cool thing I would say. Now, in terms of Sister Merle's question, would you still say the length to be the standard regardless of the hair type and texture? Oh, regardless of, I would say what translates. So let's say I'm a guy, right? Whatever would translate onto the length for Jesus going to shoulder length, right? That it, regardless of my texture, however, I need to take into account my texture. In other words, I can't let it be unkept, because there's ways whereby you can have longer hair and you look neat, and there's ways whereby you can have shorter hair and even look maybe scruffy. So it's more about, can you make it look neat and presentable? Do you see what I'm saying, Sister Birdie? Like, if you did let it grow out a bit, can you let it grow out but look neat? If it's too much to handle, then it doesn't matter if the length is hypothetically or theoretically okay. It's not good. Like, for example, a t-shirt is good, right? But if my t-shirt has a hole in it, it's not good anymore. Right? So it doesn't matter that t-shirts are fine. The t-shirt with the damage in it, or unkept t-shirt, or let's say it's not ironed, or I've cut it up, or I've stained it with some stuff, it's not that great anymore. Do you see what I mean? So the length, let's say for a guy, let's say you're going up to Jesus's length, cool. But if it looks messy, then you might want to get rid of it because it's just proving too much to handle. Like me, I try to not go past certain levels, because for me, I couldn't keep neat if I let my hair grow to, let's say, the length of what Christ's hair grow to. Like, I couldn't do that. Now, what do we mean by messy? Now that is subjective. I can't tell you. Messy is going to change depending on so many factors, right? Like, I guess with clothes, it's easier for me to say what counts as messy. If you have a shirt and then you've got, I don't know, a tomato stain on it, I guess that counts as messy, right? But if you have hair and it's just don't look kept, right? Then it could count as messy. Now, I guess someone would say that, but what is that? It's gonna change person to person, and you're just gonna have to make your best. That's where it's gonna be up to your conscious, and you and God. That one is like there's not gonna be a rule book for that one. That one is gonna be between you and God. Because, for example, right? Let me take this. For example, like here is James White, right? And I think that's in his older years. Someone may say that, oh, maybe his hair's a bit unkept, but I don't know. I think it's all right. But you know, eh, that one's gonna be between you and God. So yeah, like make your best judgment, if you will. In other words, aim to be neat, right? And if you learn something else later that you can improve, take it on board. To be fair, I think he's gone for a style here, like little curls at the side and a little curl on top. So, what's Brother David, you had a question next. Yeah, he's gone for a little style there, actually. I'm seeing it. Why weren't bond servants allowed to be free after 7 years like the Hebrew servants? Yeah. Okay. Why weren't bond servants allowed to be free? Like, so for people wondering what the context is, let's go to the context. It's in Leviticus 25. It's Leviticus 25. Let's bring this up. So, I believe it's verse 40s. Yep, there we go. And let's read from verse 39. Let's read from verse. It says, "And if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxen poor and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant, but as an hired servant, and as a sojourner. He shall be with thee, and shall serve thee unto the year of Jubilee. And then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with them, and shall return unto his own family, and unto the possession of his fathers shall he return. For they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but shalt fear thy God. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, they shall be your possession, and you shall make them an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They shall be your bondmen forever. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule over one another with rigor." Okay, so notice this. Here's the difference, right? So yeah, let me answer in two steps. So the rigor, yeah. So now for the Hebrew servants, right? There was a spiritual lesson in this as well, in the sense that if you were a Hebrew, it represented being part of God's children, so you're free. If in this world, if you choose not to be a Christian, what are you? Spiritually speaking, you're a what? What are you spiritually? Slave, you're in bondage to sin. Yes, exactly. You're a slave to sin, right? By refusing to convert, what do you remain? By refusing to convert, you remain a slave. Correct. Now, was there were there avenues such that strangers could become citizens of Israel? Were there avenues such that strangers could become exactly there were. So in other words, if somebody is going to be a bondman in Israel, right? What are the two paths legally, according to the law, that actually gets that person to that position? What are the two paths? There's actually only two paths that legally get that person to that position. What verse says they can be citizens? 1 second. Second. Uh, so in Ezekiel, there's the people of the land of Judah, not there. Where is it? Ezekiel, Ezekiel. Ah, and it shall come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourneth, there shall you give him his inheritance. So when a stranger was to dwell among Israel, so you can also see this in Exodus, right? This says, one law shall be for you and the stranger. In other words, the same law was to apply to the Israelites and to those who were foreigners. But foreigners, if they were to choose a tribe to dwell among, his inheritance was to be there. Does that make sense so far? Easiest example, think of Ruth. Was Ruth born an Israelite? No. But then did she later become an Israelite citizen? Now, in terms of bondmen, it would have to be that their master is oppressing them. But before we get to that, there's something I want to walk through with bondmen. There's something very critical I want to walk through with bondmen. When it comes to bondmen, what are the only two ways you could become a bondman according to the law? Any idea? If you chose to be, correct. Second way, war. Okay. So it was either through war or poverty. So imagine it's like this: you're an Egyptian and you can't make money in your own nation. So you have a choice. You either sell yourself into slavery in Egypt, where the laws of slavery are harsher, or you sell yourself into slavery in Israel, right? Or you try to become a citizen in Israel, right? But to become a citizen in Israel, you have to accept the God. Do you get it? You see the problem? So you can accept their God, right? And just be a normal citizen. You can sell your and try to make ends meet, right? You can sell yourself into slavery, right? If you don't want to believe in their God, or you can sell yourself to another nation where the laws are going to be harsher. Are you getting the picture now? These are your options. You don't have to become a slave. You could try and join as a stranger in the land, but the thing is, for a stranger to dwell in the land, they had to follow the laws of Israel. In other words, like to basically, they had to follow to the extent that they believe. So if you didn't want to believe, right, but still just make money for the most part, God gave them laws. God gave laws to regulate, them being in the land at least. So yeah, it doesn't mean they could go out and break Sabbath because they'll be like, oh, but I don't believe in your God, right? But still, they wouldn't get all the blessings, and but they would not be treated as if they have zero rights. Now, if they don't want that and they want the full, just to have full rights, they could have chosen to become a citizen, but you know that's that. Because if you take, for example, the mixed multitude that came out with Israel in the wilderness, they chose to join Israel. Like, Israel was meant to be a open border society. You seek an asylum, you can come here. Now, there's also this. Um, Here, where is it? Where is it? Here we go. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which has escaped, that escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you, in the place that he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. So if that bondman was treated really badly as well, and he wanted to escape, he could. He could do that, and he can escape to another Israelite as well. In fact, I believe this was an instance that happens in. Let me see it. I think this is something that happens even here. But someone could make the case we don't know what race the servants are. Right? In 1 Kings 2:39, and it came to pass at the end of 3 years that two of the servants of Shimei ran away unto Ashish, the son of Makar, king of Gath, and they told Shimei, saying, behold, thy servants be in Gath. I think someone could probably make the case that these were bondmen, because theoretically they could have been foreign bondmen. Because if they were Israelites, I'm thinking they would have gone to just another Israelite tribe. So you see this idea of slaves running away from bad masters. Okay, so let's now look at, now, could they be captured in war? Yes. In war, if the rules of war, if the nation didn't want to make peace and then Israel won the war, then they could become bondmen. So here, so I believe it's Deuteronomy 20. And it shall be, if it make the answer of peace and open up to thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributees unto thee, and they shall serve. Oh no, this is the tributary one. Okay, it's this one. It's verse 12. Yeah, but even this, it was actually specifically to the Canaanite nations, where in verse 14 it mentions that all the spoil. So it says, but the women, the little ones, the cattle, and all that is in the city, even all the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself, and thou shalt eat the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. So essentially, everyone in that city were now under their jurisdiction. So the first one is that the city would kind of just become a tributary, but the next one is more like everyone in the city is now like bondmen and bondwomen. Now, what does it mean to serve with rigor? Right? Let me bring up the verse. Where is it? Where is it? So in Exodus 1:13, right? You see this. Can you hear the background noise, by the way? Okay. So the rigor, so there's 2 points here. The rigor is basically doing hard work, right? Here. The Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. But notice this, there's a difference here. Serving with rigor doesn't necessarily mean your life is made bitter. Otherwise, the verse wouldn't say, and they made their lives bitter, right? In hard with hard bondage, in mortar, in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All this service where they made them to serve was with rigor. So, in other words, let's say your service is bringing a cup to your master, right? Bringing, I don't know, like a cup of water. Are you serving with rigor? Not necessarily. But let's say you're doing something whereby you have to carry a whole load of bricks, right? Now you're doing hard labor, you're doing hard work, right? So it also spoke to the manner of the type of work you can make them do. And if you notice in Leviticus 25, you couldn't make the Hebrew servant. Notice why. Notice what it says here. The reason why. Notice what it says here. It says, "Thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant." So the rigor, the way the word rigor is applied in Leviticus 25, is not like punishing the person while they're working. It's just making them do the hard tasks. To serve as a bondservant, serving with rigor was in serving with harder tasks, essentially. So let me just pull this up. There is another. So, like, if you took the Gibeonites, for example, the Gibeonites were a people that. No, was it? No, was it? Yeah. Let me see. Is it here? Uh, he was. Here we go. Yeah. So this is an example of serving with rigor, right? Joshua 9:23. Notice what happened to the Gibeonites, right? It says, "Now therefore are you cursed, and there shall none of you be freed from bondmen, hewers of wood, drawers of waters for the house of my God." So this would be an example of serving with rigor, even though the word is not necessarily used there. Do you get it? Is the fact that they're assigned like this is now their permanent task. Yeah. They could be freed, but because of like the master could free them if they wanted to, right? But because of like their deception, Joshua decided not to. The thing is, had they been truthful and had they just accepted God, right, then this doesn't happen. Because remember what they told them. They told them a lie. But had they repented and been truthful, then they don't even get in this position. And had they repented, does that make sense? Yeah. People say one man can. Nah, that wouldn't make sense, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have to tell them that you will not be freed. Cool. So, Mariska asks, if there is time, may we please look at time zones and Sabbath? I always wondered about the SDA family, all of the world keeping Sabbath at different times. As long as we keep Sabbath sunset, sunset, no matter where we are we keeping the true Sabbath correct? Okay. So, we do have time for this question. I don't think anyone asked the question before. You just asked the question here. But in terms of time zones and the Sabbath, let me. Okay, yeah, brother Gabe, go after. Just a quick one, Mariska. Have you read Testimonies to the Church? Let me see if there's anyone on SFP. Oh, yeah, there was Brother Cloud. But yeah, have you read? I'm on the first volume. Okay. I'm not sure if you've come across this part yet where Sister White mentions that, okay, when we kept the Sabbath from like 6:30 to or 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., the Lord was not unhappy with it because that's what people were following to the best of their ability, right? Their heart was toward the Sabbath, but they just thought it was 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. And as light came, they then shifted from sunset to sunset. I'm bringing up this point because let me get the quote. Let me get the quote. Let me get the quote. One moment. One sec, I'm just bringing up the quote. Okay, I found it. All right. It says, all right. Praise God. Your word comes in the clutch. It says this, I saw that it is even so. From even to even shall you celebrate your Sabbath, said the angel. Take the word of God, read it, understand it. Ye cannot read carefully, and ye shall find what even is, and when it is. And I asked the angel if the frown of God had been upon his people for commencing the Sabbath as they had. I was directed back to the first of the rise of the Sabbath and followed the people of God up to this time, but did not see that the Lord was displeased or frowned upon them. I inquired why it had been thus, that at this late day we must change the time commencing the Sabbath. Said the angel, ye shall understand, but not yet. Not yet. Said the angel, if light come and that light is set aside or rejected, then comes condemnation and the frown of God. But before the light comes, there is no sin, for there is no light for them to reject. I saw that if it was in the minds of some people that the Lord had shown that the Sabbath commenced at 6 o'clock, when I'd only seen that I'd commenced at even, it was inferred that even was at 6. I saw that the servants of God must draw together and press together. All right, so Mariska's obviously asking about time zones and the Sabbath. So what do we get from this? If people are keeping the Sabbath, obviously to the best of their ability, and obviously they're still aiming for that 7th day of the week, right? And they just have no knowledge completely, then the frown of God isn't upon them, right? Now, let's say we're in different time zones. That means what counts as the 7th day does change because we're on a round planet, right? So sunset to sunset is not going to work the same way everywhere else. For example, and we're amenable to that. Why? Notice in the winter, we won't say that, oh, because it's not 9 p.m., I'm not starting the Sabbath, or because it's not midnight Saturday, I'm not starting the Sabbath. When that sun goes down, you're starting the Sabbath. because that's how you're marking that it's the seventh day of the week, right? Consistent with other days. Now, if you go to, I don't know, the North Pole, or just more north, where you're gonna see less light, what have you. Or I think there are some places that you see no light even for the whole day. Does it mean that there isn't a? It's still the seventh day of the week. So the way it would work in different time zones is whatever counts as the seventh day at that point in time is essentially the beginning of the Sabbath. Does that make sense? I believe it's Sister Mariska. No problem. Yeah. So some places it's gonna, like, they'll know when the seventh day begins. You just have to live there for a bit and you'll realize. Okay, brother Gabe, you can go.
So my question, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question comes from Exodus 12 on the Passover. So on the 10th day of the first month, the children of Israel were commanded to separate a single lamb, but then it was only to be killed on the 14th day of the first month. And so I was wondering, how does this point to Jesus? Like, what happened 4 days before he died?
Wasn't it something Lazarus related? Wasn't it something Lazarus related? One sec. I'm sure it was something Lazarus related. Hmm. Let me see. I think you can count back. Wait, nah, you can't. And 6 days before the Passover came, where Lazarus has been dead, whom he had raised from the dead. Nah, it wasn't. So let me see. Jesus' crucifixion. Found this. Okay. 4 days. One, Last Supper, Jesus. Conversely, Jesus angers leaders, crowds. Yeah, that's Palm Sunday. Jesus angers leaders. Yep. So I have to count the days. So Friday sunset, Saturday sunset. That would be the day 14. That would be Passover. 3. Okay, so that's 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be somewhere between Monday and Tuesday, where it's like Jesus angers the leaders by throwing the vendors out of the temple. Jesus confronts the hypocrisy of the Jewish leaders. Didn't he say, is it then that he said your temple is left to you desolate?
Oh, that's, yeah, when he was weeping over Jerusalem.
Was that at the weeping?
Yeah.
No. Wait.
I think that's in
No,
Matthew
because
21. So it's on the Monday.
confronting the hypocrisy of the Jewish leaders, right? When he's like, you hypocrites, right?
Oh, yeah, Matthew
The
20.
end of the end of that is when he says that your temple is left unto you desolate, isn't it?
Oh, good question. Let me see. Yeah, verse 38.
Right. Now, if that happens between Monday, let's say Monday evening to Tuesday daytime, I think that would be like the equivalent of the 10th day, wouldn't it? 14, 13, 12, 11. Oh, no. It wouldn't be the equivalent of the. Wait, 4 days before the Passover. What was it? Exodus. Yeah, and shall keep it. What day did they take out the lamb?
10th day. I think that's in,
Bring it
what is
out.
it? I think like verse 3 or something. Verse 3, yeah.
Okay, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, no, it's 5 days before. It's 5 days before. It's 5 days before. So 14, Thursday to Friday, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. Palm Sunday. It wouldn't have been in the evening. It would have been Sunday during the day, wouldn't it? So you could almost see it like it's roughly around the time him being separated out. Because they're okay. So it seems that that 10th day roughly aligns with the Sunday to Monday time period. So it's like spiritually, could you say that the lamb has been separated from among the flock? You guys get what I'm saying? So in other words, Sunday, it's all about Jesus, right? They're praising Jesus, da 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 da. But then Jesus is that actually helps to, should I say, single out, it brings more eyes to Jesus. So I remember this in Desire of Ages. Sister White mentioned that Palm Sunday allowed all eyes to be on the cross. It was essentially raising attention such that by the time he gets crucified, all eyes will be on Christ, right? Now it's interesting. If they take out the lamb from the 10th day, then it's like your focus has now been steered towards the lamb from that day. That's the only parallel I can see right now.
Yeah. I think I'm seeing something.
It's an interesting one. Interesting point. Yeah. Cool. All right. I think that we're about hitting the hour, unless anyone has one more quick one to sneak in. Nope. All right. Oh, nope. Mariska, Sister Mariska. Yep. Let me just let you type it out. In Leviticus, it mentioned not to mix seed. Is this just for back then? So there's a twofold lesson here, right? I think one is that for your crops, monoculture, I think is generally more efficient, right? So like, let's say you're planting a wheat field, right? It's generally more efficient to plant a wheat field rather than trying to plant wheat, then an apple tree, then a mango tree. Do you see what I mean? If you specialize the field to that one thing, it grows better. Now, there's a spiritual lesson as well. And the spiritual lesson was the fact that seed represents the word. So you're not mixing a good word with a bad word. Does that make sense? So the same way, remember in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul says you shouldn't muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, right? Paul explains that this is not that this was about ox. It was actually about pastors and you having to pay pastors, right? Having to pay people that feed you the word. And Paul says that's what this really means. So it's the same thing with the seed. That's what that means as well. Now, in terms of the wearing of linen and cotton, there's a practical application there. The practical application is that the wearing of linen and cotton together would cause sweat upon the ministering person, and it will cause you to overheat, if you will. And it was specific. No, it wasn't linen. It was wool. It was wool and linen. It was wool and linen. It was wool and linen. Sorry, not. So yeah, because wool is very, wool is very good at retaining heat. So if you mixed wool with another material like that, it would you would overheat basically. So it was a protective measure. And by the way, people try to use that to say that, oh, God said don't mix fabrics, but that's not what this verse is saying. The verse isn't saying don't mix any fabric at all. It's saying specifically wool and linen. because that would cause you to overheat. So it's for your own protection. Yeah, because people love to take that and say that, oh, God says you can't mix it. Two types of. I think tomatoes wouldn't. They would be the same type of seed. Yeah. By the way, because we have way more species, I guess today, or variants in terms of certain seeds, because we've like crossbred a whole load of things. Um, but I guess they would have seen it as tomatoes is tomato. Yeah. Like, I guess what you could say is that whenever you're doing a specific species and a specific seed, right, you always want to better group them together, and it's going to be, you know, um, more, what's the word, efficient in terms of growth. Let me bring this up. Like when you look at the majority of farms and what they do, you tend to find that they do monoculture, right? And this is for feeding the world. So, like humanity, after thousands of years, has realized that actually it is probably better to do things in a monoculture sense, right? Because I guess it may always be the case that imagine you had an apple tree next to some other type of plant. The apple tree may require so much resources that the other plant can't get the same nutrients or as easy. Yeah, I think the standard today is monoculture though. Oh yeah, I mean, you don't have a whole, I guess, a whole field, or maybe you do, maybe you do. But like, yeah, like if you have, if we're doing like end time living, then you use whatever space you can, you can get. Like if you have a garden, right? You may apply a small patch to potatoes, another patch to, I don't know, pumpkins, another patch to tomatoes, another patch to something else. You know what I mean? Kind of like divide up the garden and have your things grow in its spot. Because even there, right? Even in like a small patch of garden, you still section things off, isn't it? I imagine. Like for example, let's say you had a pot of I don't know, tomatoes. You tend to not mix garlic seeds next to them. Well, at least that's what I see, right? Maybe some people actually do that. Maybe some people maybe some people do that. No, exactly. Do people mix like that? So if I plant two pumpkin seeds and cross pollinate, cross it. No, no, two pumpkins is the same type of thing. Pumpkin, pumpkin. Uh, Let me see. You talk about permaculture or polyculture? Because there's a difference.
Sorry, I'm just
So
going to voice here because it might be a little bit easier. I do a little bit of everything. So I have some sections where I try to, have some scrubby plants and then have trees as well and some herbs at the bottom. But then when I read this verse, I was like, oh my goodness, I like to put different types of tomatoes, and then whichever one survives, I know that grows well in my area. Or you get a different mix. But then when I read don't mix seed, I was like, if I can avoid them cross-pollinating, maybe that's what the verse is saying, but I didn't know if it was symbolic for something else, and I didn't want to get too hone too much on it, but I also want to do exactly what God wants me to do. So I was just wondering if you had any input on that, because I live in a very difficult area to grow things. So for me, if I could plant a whole bunch of tomatoes and whichever one survived, and if they cross-pollinate and that one grows good here, then in my head that was perfect. But now I don't want to plant two types of tomatoes because I don't know if that would be, because if you plant them, the seed that you're going to get from that is going to be different if they cross-pollinate. It's not going to be the same plant anymore. But then some people say, we're at a time where everything that we have is a variety, so it's not really applicable. But I just didn't want to do something directly against what God said if I can help it, if that makes sense.
yeah, I get what you mean. So I'll say have a look at this and let me see if I can let me bring up this other verse and then we'll close with this. Let me bring up this other verse 1 second. So Deuteronomy 22 verse 9, where it says, thou shalt not sow thy vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. So there is one thing here. When you look at the word defiled in the Strongs, right, you tend to notice there seems to be more of a spiritual connotation to it. So in the Hebrew, when you look at the word defiled, kadas, here, it means to be hallowed, sanctified, and actually when you look at the stem, yeah, it's in the cow stem. So to be set apart, to be hallowed, to be consecrated, or tabooed, right? So it's about consecrating or holiness. It seems to be sanctifying. So in this case, the negative sense, in other words, it seems to be more spiritual than rather literal. And notice why vineyard is used. What does Israel get compared to? A vineyard, right? Israel gets compared to a vineyard. So if the seed represents the word, right? And then you're mixing diverse words, obviously, let's say heresies and stuff like that, with the true word, right? Then the vineyard, which should produce good fruit, like, the people, Christians or Israelites at that time, they would be defiled. So that was the spiritual lesson behind this verse. Now, what's interesting is notice how this is only applying to the vineyard in Deuteronomy 22 verse 9, right? And I think this would make it clearer that it's meant to be spiritual, because this is repeating what was there before. So I guess the goal wasn't even for it to be general, but more so just to apply to the vineyard as a lesson. Because I remember there's a
Okay.
Leviticus counterpart to this where it looks more general. Yeah, there's a Leviticus counterpart where it looks more general. But if you remember, Deuteronomy sometimes makes things like it repeats the same thing in another way. So let me go away and have a look and double confirm this. But I think even when it was mentioning about sowing of seed, it was meant to be to the vineyard in Leviticus 19:19. And more so as a
Thank you
spiritual
so
lesson.
much. Appreciate it.
No problem. Good call. But yeah, let me. Yeah. I remember that. So let me go away and look at that just for Leviticus 19:19. But I'm pretty much sure it's actually meant to be just about the vineyard. Yeah. All right. With that being said, we can close out. Any other questions or comments, you can let me know. Okay, so if we can, let's kneel. We'll close out in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time of study and increase in learning. Lord, we want to pray. Please help us to continue to find the answers to these questions. Help us to understand these things so that we may be ready to not just teach others, but also wherever there's a spiritual lesson, we can stand strong. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.